in our assets, in our allies, in our ability to move exports and transit and our goods and services throughout the world, we are vulnerable. We are vulnerable to those who want to take from us our freedoms and liberty.
With all due respect, that is simply not right. I've had the privilege of representing my country in a foreign country. On my very first day at the embassy, as I pulled out of the gate, flag proudly flying on the fender of the car, I looked out the window and there was an 80-year-old Maltese man saluting the flag of the United States. I said to the driver, "Jimmy, stop the car, I want to hug that guy." I said, "Ambassador, if you're going to stop the car for everyone who's going to salute the flag of the United States, you're never going to get to work." And he's right. He's right because people respect us for what we stand for. And you know what we stand for. We stand for peace. We stand for freedom. We stand on principle and consistency. But we lose all of that when we send money and we send military aid and assistance to countries that are trying people by the hundreds and the thousands for merely protesting in a square in Cairo, Egypt. We lose that respect when we ally ourselves with Muammar Gaddafi and make payments to him, as we did, by the billions to maintain stability in that part of the region. We need a diplomatic-centered foreign policy. We can have it, we know how to do it, and it will maintain that respect of that salute that that Maltese man gave our flag in that moment.
Thank you. Additional comments on this topic?
With all due respect, too, Malta is not Pakistan, Malta is not Iran, Malta is not North Korea, Malta is not, Malta has no Hezbollah, Malta has no Hamas. We are on multiple fronts under attack for our values. And we have pulled back from our support of some of the key allies we have throughout this world. We have failed to provide missile defense in Europe. We have pulled back from opportunities to provide support in the Middle East. And I do not want people to confuse the debate around foreign aid, which was rightfully brought up, with having a strong military. Those are two different debates, and I feel very passionately different about those two debates. But preserving strong military capable of having a deterrent effect is the way that we're going to stay free. Thank you.
Any final comments? Mr. Direct, last word.
Malta's a small country. It's been fought over by every country on the globe at one time or another. But this is where you find your alliances. I got to know Chris Stevens while I was serving in Malta, a special envoy for Libya, product of our education system here in California, one bright young man who spoke Arabic and was opening up the most wonderful doors of opportunity and stability for our investments and for our people to travel to in Libya. We were 200 miles away from Libya. When the shooting started, we had to get our personnel out, and we got them out. I don't disagree with Jeff in the least about the importance of our military. But I just want to make sure that when a president makes a decision to send young men and women in uniform to a country, he knows what the objective is, and whether it's achievable, and whether or not it's consistent with American interests.
Thank you, District Commander. Thank you, candidates. Thank you. That concludes the general questioning round. We do want to continue as we begin to wrap up with one final round of questioning. We recognize that it's important that candidates be versed on the topics that we present, but it's also important that we address these candidates on their individual strengths and weaknesses. So let's begin with tailored questions for each candidate, and we'll start from left to right. Our final questions for the candidates.
Mr. Ignatius, like Mr. Gorell, we salute you for your service in the armed forces. And thank you for the time you spent protecting the public as a member of the LAPD. Beyond owning your own business, do you have for a legislative position that will require knowledge of a broad range of complex issues, including economics, constitutional law, and foreign policy? In short, what response do you have for those who question whether or not you have the public policy knowledge base to serve as an effective member of the United States Congress?
It's a great question. Around October of last year, I tried to reach out to a former congressperson that used to represent this area. And the response that I got, I wanted some advice before I jumped into this race. And the response that I received was, and Ralph, by the way, people call me Ralph, you can do that. Ralph, you don't have any legislative experience to take on this role. And my response to that congressman was, that's exactly what we need in Washington. People that don't have that legislative experience. The common person that's been doing common things throughout their life. They have been serving their community in various different ways. They have created jobs. They have tackled the bureaucracies of city, state, and government. The founding fathers of this country had no legislative experience. They were farmers, they were fathers, they were businessmen, large and small. They were farmers. We don't need experience in the legislative arena. These are the same people that got us here right now. We are in trouble because so much experience is in Sacramento and in Washington.
Thank you, Robert. Mr. Gorell, when you served for the Assembly and in your campaign for Congress, you presented yourself as more of a modern Republican, someone willing to work on both sides of the aisle. And your work with Gavin Newsom in promoting California business is a good example. But the question remains, where does Jeff Gorell stand on the serious social issues, for instance, abortion and gay marriage?
Those are great questions, thank you. I'm a pro-choice Republican. It's not an easy place to be as a Catholic, lifelong Catholic, educated, confirmed Catholic. But I don't want people to think that I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. and crusade against undoing Roe v. Wade. I do believe that there's basic privacy protections that are enumerated within Roe v. Wade. What you will see, though, I have a vote record in Sacramento that is more consistent with somebody who's pro-life. And people ask me about that all the time. Why did you receive an F from Planned Parenthood? And certainly Julia Brownlee will remind you of that over and over again over the next 6 months. Because I do want to protect women as much as I can. And some of the bills that were presented to me in Sacramento were terrible. They would have allowed, and they do allow now, a bill I voted against, to allow nurses to perform abortions. It doesn't protect women. That just creates bifurcation in our society where those in socioeconomically disadvantaged communities only have access to that kind of health care by going to a nurse, by going to a doctor. They deserve to go to a doctor. As far as gay marriage, my personal belief is that a marriage is a one man and one woman, and I've always believed that. I did believe that DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act at the federal level, was unconstitutional because I believe it's up to the states. It's up to the states to decide how they want to define this institution. And so that's how I look at it going into Washington, D.C. at the federal level. So.
Thank you very much. Last question to you, Mr. Kmek. Mr. Kmek, I suspect many in the audience this afternoon admire your decision to remain independent and forgo the financial support that the party machinery can offer. And yet, by failing to raise large sums like the other candidates, haven't you crippled your own campaign, making it difficult to reach out to voters who might otherwise support you? Given your lack of fundraising and campaign outreach, are you making a serious bid for this office, or are you simply trying to make a point?
No, this is a serious bid. You might not view it as serious because I don't have a lot of money to spend. But actually, that's the whole serious point, is that you shouldn't have to need money to spend to run for public office. office, to dedicate yourself to the community, to ask that you be given an opportunity to serve. Yes, without the dollars, it's hard to be heard, and I want to thank the newspaper, the Acorn, and the university for this forum, which is one of the most important ways in which we have been heard. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is so important. Too many times as I gathered my petitions to get on the ballot, I heard, especially from young people, but maybe from all ages, I'm not registered, they'd say. It was almost to the point of pride. I'm not registered because those people don't matter to me. Well, this is again this proposition from Dr. Franklin. It's a republic if you can keep it. Long ago, Cicero told us that great values are handed on from one generation to the next like a fine painting. And you have a choice. You can either restore in your generation the colors of that painting and make it vibrant and beautiful and attractive again, as we would our constitutional system, or you can let it decline. I have taught the Constitution for 40 years. I don't intend to let it decline. This is a serious candidacy, and I am a serious candidate.
Thank you very much. Well, let's begin with our closing comments, minute 30, and this will wrap up the program. We'll begin with Raphael. Your closing comments, sir.
Thank you. As you may have noticed during this forum, I'm not a politician, nor do I seek to become a career politician. I don't believe the founding fathers of this great nation ever intended for its political leaders to make their livelihood off politics. I believe Congress should have term limits. My belief system is based on conservative principles and real-world experiences with results, not carefully placed political ads and words. I've created real jobs and fought the bureaucracies of city, state, and federal government as a business owner. I don't believe any of my opponents can say the same. My opponents use catchy phrases like the GO team. What happened to the GO team when Toyota announced its departure from California last week? This state is a mess. Do we really want Sacramento politicians in Washington? I promise that no one will work harder for you with honesty and integrity. I am a Reagan conservative. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you. I want to salute the candidates who joined me on the podium. I do think that the lack of attendance by the incumbent is symbolic of what's wrong in Washington, D.C. And as an arrogant his arrogance that is hopefully going to be recognized by independent voters, Republican voters, and otherwise. I have had the opportunity to serve this community in many different ways, as a legislator, as a naval officer, as a small businessman, as a teacher here at Cal Lutheran University, as a prosecutor. And that all of that experience is allowed me to, I believe, possess the leadership skills necessary to go. When I went to Sacramento, I was able to work across the aisle and to be at the table when important decisions were made. And I'm proud to have been part of the team that negotiated the Rainy Day Fund, which you will have an opportunity to vote on in November. It was negotiated across the aisle. And that Rainy Day Fund will, for the first time in 30 years or more, require the state of California to start saving money during the good years so that we don't have to raise taxes or ask you to raise taxes during the bad years. I had the opportunity to directly negotiate and represent businesses in developing a manufacturer's tax credit that companies like Amgen and Haas Automation, who threatened to leave California, made them reconsider and stay here. I worked a court bill, which was a bipartisan bill to bring opportunities and jobs to the Port of Guanini, one of our important job creators. I'm going to take these leadership skills that I've been able to show in Sacramento, and take those to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to move my party forward so that we can have a vision that people can follow, regular folks, middle-class folks can follow a vision, so we can attack the $17 trillion deficit that is waiting out there, that is one of the most vulnerable things for our nation going forward. We can also preserve a strong military, we can fight for agriculture, and we can break down the forces of influence in Washington, D.C. that want to preserve the status quo.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. And our final comments, final words,
Thank you for your attendance and attention this afternoon. Both parties have let us down. I've worked for both of them, and in their own way, they're well-intentioned. But we've seen what's happened with the 113th Congress. What passes for conversation is both parties show up in the same room, repeat their respective positions, say that the other guy didn't compromise, and they left. That happens over and over again. It's happened with unemployment compensation. There are people in this community who have not been able to sustain themselves because unemployment benefits have run out at Christmas time, and the bill that would extend them is just sitting, waiting for action.